Welcome to today's writing lesson. You've done a fantastic job the past couple days working on your personal narrative, this true story about your life. On Monday, you started with some brainstorming and you came up with a whole bunch of cool ideas. And finally, you chose one of them that you really wanted to focus on. You did a little bit of exploring of that idea. You wrote some details about it. And yesterday you started doing some storyboarding where you chose a big action in the middle and you drew a picture of that. And then you kind of created a timeline here where you where you thought about the events in your story and what order they happened in. So today, we're going to take your story and you're going to practice telling your story. You're going to rehearse your story. One thing that can really help storytelling and story writing is telling your story out loud. This is something that's really a fun thing to practice, especially when you're doing creative writing. And what this is going to do is really begin to add some descriptive language to your story and add some transition words, some words that move us from one part of the story to the next. So before we begin, make sure that you have your language notebook ready with your storyboard that you made that looks a little bit something like this storyboard here, and a pencil. And before we begin, we're going to talk a little bit about transition words. I'm just going to write that here. Transition words. Now, transition words are words that help us move from one part of a story to the next. Transition words. And in your notebook, I would actually like you to write a couple of these transition words underneath your storyboard. We're going to use these in a bit here, and it's actually helpful to have some of these words handy. Now, there are many transition words. We're just going to write a few of them here. So as I write them, go ahead and copy them down, and of course, you can pause the video if you need to, if you need a bit more time to write. So to begin with, let's think about some transition words or some words that we use to start a story. Obviously, one of them is the word first. Another example of a transition word or a word to start a story might be in the beginning. Can you think of any other words that might start a story? How about it all started when? These are just a few ways you might start a story. If you can think of any others, go ahead and add them here as well. Pause if you need to, and go ahead and record these in your notebook underneath your storyboard. I'm going to shrink them so I can so I have a bit more room here. All right, that's how we might start a story. But then, how do we move into the next part of our story? Well, some words that we might use to move us from one part of a story to the next, from one part of the story to the next. There's some words that help with that as well. So we need words that transition us from one part of the story to the next part of the story. I'll show you some examples of words that move us along. These are transition words. That's what a transition means, moving us along. So we had first. How about second? So the first thing that happened was, then the second thing that happened was, we might use the word next, or the word then. That's a good transition word. Then this happened. Then that happened. We might use a transition word like, or even a phrase. How about a while later? That's a good one. I'm going to make a bit more room here. What are some other transition words? Let's see here. How about after a while? After a while. These are words that move us from one part of a story to the next. Make sure you've got those copied down. These can come in handy. And we're going to need these for the last part of our work here. And how about some words for the end of our story? Can you think of any transition words or phrases that you might use toward the end of a story? Well, how about the word? So we had first and then second. How about last or lastly or finally or in the end? Oh dear. In the end is a great one. Missing a D there. There we go. Lastly, finally, in the end, in conclusion. All right, we've got some good transition words now. And now you're ready to complete the last part of this work. So for the last part of this work, we are going to tell a story. And we are going to use these transition words to tell a story. So for this work, you can use Notability. It has a record function up here on the top. That's one way to record. Another way to record is with your iPad. When you make a submission, you can make a recording and just record yourself reading out loud. It's one of the options. Just like adding a photo, you can add a recording. Another thing that you can do is add a screen recording. Swipe down on the top of your screen here. Do you see that red blinking light there? Hold that button down. Make sure your microphone is on. And when you let go, and when you tap it, it will start recording. These are just a few ways to make a recording that you can then submit. We're going to make a recording of ourselves telling the story. It's very simple. We're going to start at the beginning of our story. And we're going to use some of these transition words. And then we're going to move to the next part of our story and use some transition words here to get to the action of our story. And then to talk about what happens after the action. And to talk about what happens at the end, using those transition words that we wrote underneath as a little clue. I'm going to give you an example here of what this might look like. Well, my story all started when I was driving to Washington to go on vacation. I was very excited. The whole drive, all I could think about was how fun it was going to be to go sailing with my friend Arthur. Well, after a while, notice how I use that transition word, after a while. After a while, I arrived in Washington State. I'm going to look at some of the details in my drawing to help my memory. I parked my red car in his driveway and pulled up. We were so happy to see each other. I said, I can't wait to go sailing. Is the sailboat ready? And Arthur said, I hate to break it to you, but your sailboat, the sailboat has a big hole in it, so I don't think we're going to be able to go sailing. I was really disappointed. Now, in this part of the story, I want my audience to feel kind of disappointed. So I might say that I looked down at my shoes, and Arthur could tell I was a little bit upset. And he mentioned, well, there's one thing we could do, but it's not going to be easy. We can go out to the shipyard and patch up the hole in the boat. Problem is, we can only go there in the middle of the night. Now, in this part of the story, I want people to feel kind of excited. So we went in the middle of the night, and the shipyard was completely empty except for the security guard walking around. And we went out to the wood shop and we turned all the lights on. And sure enough, the sailboat did have a hole in the bottom. But we got out some materials and started to patch it. It takes all night to dry, but we were just hoping that it would be dry in the morning so we could get on the sailboat. Well, a while later, we woke up to a bright, sunny day. We walked down to the shore and dragged the boat out, and sure enough, the hole was patched up and dry and ready to sail. We got out on the water. At first, we sailed slowly, but the wind picked up and caught our sail. It filled our sail with air, and we started gaining speed. We were cruising. The water splashed on our faces. It was a blast. Well, finally, in the end, the last thing we did was we all made a big dinner and talked about all of the adventures we've been on for the past couple of days. And we planned our next sailing trip tomorrow. And this time, we would make sure that our sailboat didn't have any holes. There we go. That is my story. I would stop recording at this point and submit my recording to today's assignment. And that is all for this work. I cannot wait to hear your stories. Now, once I've told my story, I can go back, I can listen to my story, looking for those transition words, looking for those descriptive words, and this is going to help me take my writing and my storytelling to the next level, because I will have already started to get my ideas kind of out of my mind, out of my head, and I can take those ideas and put them onto paper.